We go out, we drink, we have sex with someone we wouldn't have sex with sober. We come home, we feel like, oh wow, that was a little bit crazy, but oh well, we have some parts, but they're not extreme. But we do that a lot, or there was some shame, or there was some danger involved. The risk went higher. We're going to have a different kind of backlash to that from our managers. Are going to be like, what? What did you just do? So I do feel it's a real systemic process.
Hey, curious people, you're listening to the Self-Led in Bed podcast, where we explore our fascinating internal sexual landscapes and discover our authentic sexual selves. I'm your host, Patricia Rich, a certified internal family systems and sex therapist, coach, and creator of the Self-Led Sexuality model for healing, pleasure, and empowerment. I've spent the last 30 years helping people to develop fulfilling relationships with themselves and others. If you're ready for some warm, smart, and juicy conversations, me and my parts invite you and your parts to get cozy and settle in. In the IFS model, firefighters are protective parts of ourselves who try to extinguish the flames of emotional pain by any means necessary. This may include extreme use of substances or sexual behavior, or lesser indulgences that still displease our controlling manager parts. At a time of year when many people are resolving to give up their firefighter behaviors, I am so happy to send some love and appreciation their way with the help of today's guest, Cece Sykes. Cece is a beloved founding trainer with the IFS Institute and has spent over 2 decades educating therapists around the world on IFS and treating addictive processes compassionately. She co-authored IFS Therapy for Addictions, as well as numerous articles and book chapters. She also offers retreats for therapists to explore their personal narratives. And later in today's episode, she invites me to share more about my own motivations in working with sexuality. Please join us for this heartfelt conversation with lots of laughs along the way. Hi, Cece.
Hi, Patricia.
Thank you so much for making time in your very busy schedule to be a guest here on the Self-Led in Bed podcast.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's always nice to have a chance to talk.
Yes, and have a talk about sex, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you're noticing any parts as we get started.
I was having parts, I'm sure I have them now, but I was having parts like, what am I going to talk about? Am I going to talk about myself? Am I going to talk about clients? So how am I going to talk about sex? It seems like it seems like a very big subject,
Yeah.
in so many ways. How I grew up, relationships, then how I'm working with it. It seems like it's so broad, and I'm my inclination, my impulses, my healthy firefighters are a little impulsive. So parts of me are like, would you please not be impulsive and or please don't overshare in this particular podcast, Cease. That's what my managers are telling my firefighters not to overshare. So I don't know what that means, but that's going on.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you speaking for that. And I kind of have those parts every time I hit record because I have
Right.
parts that want to teach through just very true and lived experience. And I
Yeah.
have other parts that are like, you cannot put the genie back in the bottle. This is
Right.
this is
Yes.
going to be out there. AI is going to
Yes.
harvest it. It's going to like be part of the forever global consciousness.
Right. Exactly.
So, something I encourage actually when I work with clients and consultees and anyone really is the pause
Mm.
and to check for internal consent. So, if at any
Ah.
point you notice an impulsive part stepping up, I totally welcome any pause you might want to take and just to sit
Oh, yeah.
back and feel into that and listen to the dialogue. And maybe there's some part, something is okay, but not the whole kahuna. So I welcome that as we go.
Thanks. I love that. I love
And we
that.
can even, shorten the pause. If you need 15 minutes, I got 15 minutes.
Oh,
So,
no, yeah, it'll be okay.
yeah, cool. And are there any aspects of your, well, I was going to ask about your identity, but I didn't ask you yet about your geographic location. So maybe start there and then anything about
Sure.
your identity you'd like to share.
I'm a Chicagoland person, basically my whole life. Right now, I live in Oak Park, which is a border of Chicago. And it's actually where Dick Schwartz used to live when he started IFS. So we could call it a birthplace for IFS back in the day. And actually, years and years ago, starting around 99, 2000, somewhere in there when I finished my level one, we didn't have a level then. There was just a training. There was not a level two even. So, but anyway, when I finished it, came to consultation groups here in Oak Park. I didn't live in Oak Park at the time. I lived in a different suburb. So, and I have cousins, second cousins. Anyway, I've been coming to Oak Park a long time, and now I live here. And I came to Oak Park for a consultation with Dick, which I had the opportunity to do many years ago. So it's wonderful to, and it's
So
just,
you were at ground zero. You're at,
yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe that's not
right.
a good phrase anymore. You were at the
Yeah.
birthplace. Let's say that.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I just have pleasant associations in so many
Hmm.
ways. I like this town for a lot of reasons. And
Yeah.
I have pleasant associations with it.
I don't know if you know that I used to live in Chicago.
Oh, you know what? I heard that somewhere in maybe one of your podcasts. Where were you
Yeah,
living
so
before?
I moved there to go to social work school at the University of Chicago.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then I moved to the North Side and worked in community mental health for 10 years in Chicago. I was
Where were you
at
working?
C4 and at Ravenswood. It was
Yeah.
Edgewater Uptown Community
Yeah.
Mental
Yeah.
Health, which became
Yeah.
C4. And I don't know if it exists anymore. And then I was at Ravenswood, and then I trained at IJR, which was right after Dick had left.
Were
So
you at IJR?
I did a post grad program in family therapy at IJR.
Oh, for God's sakes. What year were you there?
Yeah, oof, maybe 92 or something like that with
Okay. Yeah. Dick was
Betty,
Betty
someone,
McCune Carr.
Horror. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. She's
Yeah,
lovely. Oh, my God. Well, just to say, not that we'll go off on this too long, but it's a
yeah.
little bit of a Chicago thing and an IJR thing. So Dick was obviously at IJR early on, and that's where I first knew him as a family therapist because I was trained in family therapy as well, and his initial degree was in family therapy, his PhD. So he was at IJR. So I worked at that time at Midwest Family Resource, which was started by Irv Borstein, who started the Family Systems program at IJR.
Which is
So
Institute for Juvenile Research, in case
right. So
anyone's curious.
so we were sort of cousin organizations. So we used to go back and forth, and that's where I used to begin to see Dick and at those sort of common conferences. And then I kind of heard about that's when I was there when he first talked about we heard this whole idea. Dick has a new idea. So we drove downtown to IJR to hear Dick's new idea, and then he talked about parts, and we're like, what? So anyway, IJR was where he was when he was putting all that together in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I love the Chicago connection,
I
and
know. It's
we
great to
could
know
go
you're
on and
here.
on, I'm
We could, but
sure,
we won't.
but we won't. Not this time, maybe
We'll
another
stop
time.
ourselves.
And in terms of your identities, do you want to say anything about
Sure. In terms of my
yourself?
social identity, I identify, I'm white, I'm cis, my pronouns are she and her. I've been in hetero relationships. I'm in a senior hetero relationship now. I met we're married now. We weren't married for a long time. We were together. It's 60. So just to say, give hope to everyone. Not, and I had a first marriage when I was, young, right after college, and I was in that marriage a long time too. And what else about my identity? That's kind of it. Is that right? Did I
Yeah.
say everything? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It covers
That's
it.
great. Yeah. Thank you. And I know I've done it on a bunch of episodes, but I'll just say I identify as a cisgender woman and myself am in a very long-term relationship and white and therapist turn trainer turn. I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm searching for words now for what it is that I do. And I feel like
Yeah.
the name
Right.
therapist doesn't quite capture it, and coach and
No.
consultant
Mhm.
capture parts of it. So it's sort of an evolving identity that seems to kind of go beyond some of those boxes.
And maybe we'll talk more about that a little later, perhaps.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I totally get that.
yeah. And so you are well known in the community for your work with addictions and substance use and firefighters. And so I was excited to invite you on to the podcast because I feel like sexuality like often gets relegated to talking about it in terms of firefighters. Like that, especially as
Mm,
therapists and in our trainings, I don't think we ever talked in training about sexuality in the context of self energy or wholeness or healing. If it comes up at all, it tends to be around, difficulties that people are having, either the trauma side or the excess activity of firefighters.
right. Well, I could say a couple of things. First is I feel something that I've added to some concepts about firefighters. Of course, I agree completely with Dick that firefighters are here to put out the emotional flames of exiles, so that is their essential role. But in that role, they are adapting to a system that has been burdened. But in terms of the idea of pleasure or where does firefighting fighting and sensuousness fit in, I think that in every system, and it's universal that we have managers or parts of us to try to keep us on track and keep things stable and improve. We have firefighters, and that how I define them is they encourage rest, relaxation, pleasure, sweetness, novelty, adventure, so that is the sort of core intention of managers. We implicitly understand that managers have a healthy role in our life, but they get extreme. We don't implicitly always understand that firefighters have a healthy role in our life because the way the model labels them is in their adaptive role, is being extreme because they're putting out emotional fires. But I think we can call them whatever, we can label them in whatever way we wish, but we have parts of us that help us shift gears. If our managers are doing, our firefighters are doing something else. And what do we do to shift gears from work to not work, from the workday week to the not workday time? What do we like to do in that time? And I think that firefighters help us figure that out. And of course, in a burden system, that we need a far more soothing and relief and escape. The need for that is far greater in a system where there's a lot of unprocessed pain and where the managers have had to become very, very rigid in order to uh, help us function. So, of course, they can become extreme. But I really like when we ask a firefighter's intention, so often it's to do something like connect. I've heard that so many times. So I
Hmm.
wanted to help him or connect, or I wanted to help them have fun, or I wanted to help them feel good. So these are really positive intentions. And yet, in our manager driven culture, we can almost have a reaction to feeling good or having fun. So, and we would say self does not react, but that the poor burdened managers react to the idea of fun. But I want to prepare people to just to be present to an intention about fun and sweetness and pleasure, and to notice that they might have parts that react to that.
I'm taking in just all these different pieces in what you said, just some of the words you listed, like soothers and gear changers and
Mhm.
all these functions,
Mhm.
connectors, and all these parts that might want to counterbalance extreme work
Right.
habits or just manager driven
Yep.
control type
Yep.
efforts, right? And so in the system, and then there's these, if the more burdened the exiles are, then the more extreme these two roles are going to become.
You got it. You got it.
Yeah. And the soothing, like I get, so if we're talking about sexuality specifically, like
Yeah.
to my mind, each kind of part in the system can have roles related to sexuality.
Uh-huh.
And, so managers need to manage, might use sexuality to do their role, right? Like if you look really sexy, then you're going to get approval, and that's going to get a little bit of help for your exile who's neglected and alone, right?
Uh-huh.
So there's like, so first there's the pleasure side, which I guess is
Right.
where we're starting. Maybe I should stay there for a minute. Kind of where does pleasure live in the
Yeah.
system? How can we have an appreciation for pleasure? But then I think sexuality isn't always equivalent with pleasure. There can be all
Right,
sorts
of course.
of dimensions and difficulties and painful
Right.
things too, right? And so I think like
Right.
the different pieces can all hold some of the energy around what someone's experience of sexuality is.
Well, I love what you're saying. I love, I love the lens of IFS to sort of describe some of these places. So I love hearing what you're saying about how a manager might help someone dress in a certain kind of way, a man or a woman, or anyone, just to, because if I'm looking attractive, I'm attractive, I'm being accepted. If I look sexy, something else, but just how those managers might help you again, try to, if I'm hearing you correctly, interact in the external world.
Absolutely. And it could be the opposite. A manager could work hard to keep us unattractive
Yes.
in order to not attract unwanted sexual energy
Right.
or
Look,
attention.
help us look sexless
Hmm.
or
You know,
stay under the
conventionally
radar.
unattractive, or I'm going to, not take care of my appearance
Yeah,
because I don't want that attention.
that's right. Yeah, just to stay
Mm-hmm.
under and just even just to stay under the radar of old wounds. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that could be firefightery, that might not be a conscious choice. Would you say that
Uh-huh.
could be a reactive choice, like somehow?
Well, I was thinking that as I was saying it, that it could go either way. It's certainly a protector, just
Mm-hmm.
watching out to keep our system safe.
Hmm. And for those who might be a little less familiar, we have this notion in IFS that there's these two kinds of protectors, and the managers tend to be proactive and preventing the activation of discomfort or the exile's energy, which are like these vulnerable parts with burdens. And the firefighters are the reactive ones. They're going to react in order to keep discomfort from, I guess, to, why can't I find the word? To
Yeah.
extinguish
Yeah.
or
Put out
drown out, put out.
right. I always say some of them soothe, so they're offering some sort of comfort or pleasure. Some of them distract, which is just get us into another headspace, if you will, or body space. And some of them sort of help us just come escape, just be somewhere else. And
Mhm.
there is positive things with all of that.
Right.
We all do all of those things, soothe ourselves, distract ourselves, have parts that distract, parts that soothe, and parts that, just if you talk about sitting on the couch, putting on your softest sweats, sitting on the couch, you have different, maybe you have a beverage, adult or otherwise, or some soothing, there's soothing, there's pleasure, there's sweetness, you're checking out by watching Netflix. All of these things are part of our everyday life. And then obviously sex in addition.
Hmm. Right.
However, that also
So there could be a
fold that in.
spectrum. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, didn't mean to say.
yeah, no, no, go, go, go.
So there could be a spectrum of very adaptive, soothing
Of course,
strategies, right? And then some that
absolutely.
start to have, like, how do we know if our strategies are actually problematic?
I, and this is a little bit of a controversial statement, but I feel that our managers always know if our firefighters are getting a little crazy. I feel like there is an inner knowing around that. At the same time, what one way to think about it clinically is, these are high consequence, high risk parts. So if the consequences grow and there is a disdain for the consequences, I'm losing relationships, I'm losing time, I'm losing money, I'm losing my self-respect. But so the parts help us not tune into that, even though other parts of us are feeling it. Those are, again, it's all also on a continuum, but those are signs that those parts have now sort of taken on a life of their own.
Mhm. So it's kind of the impact and consequences
You got it.
of the firefighter parts or
That's right.
soother parts.
Right. There's
and there's
always a
some
barrier,
awareness of it, but then persisting in it despite that.
despite those negative consequences. You got it. If there's no backlash to an activity, I always say there can't be an addiction if there's no backlash.
What do you mean by that?
That if I do something and I come home and I'm okay with it, then I'm not addicted to it. I'm not saying if I am blocking all my feelings, I'm not saying, if those, I'm saying if I am in self at the end of an activity, after an activity, then that's not an addiction. There's no backlash, I'm in self,
Mhm.
or more or less, right?
Mhm.
But that backlash is the manager's trying to get balance back and trying to find the right balance for whatever that firefighter just did. So it's trying to get the system operating again after what feels like is going off, going off the rails.
Interesting. So you're not defining, would you use the word addictive or extreme behavior? I don't know which language you would use for that, but it's not defined by the thing itself. It's, not like, oh, if you have 2 drinks, you're okay, but if you have 4 drinks, you're not. It's more about your access to core self energy, how this is sitting in your system.
It is, yeah, I feel it is systemic. I feel like managers and firefighters are hinged, and the bottom of that hinge is exiles. And so they're very much in relation. Our managers are very aware of what our firefighters do, and they take us off the rails. We go out, we drink, we have sex with someone we wouldn't have sex with sober. We come home, we feel like, oh wow, that was a little bit crazy, but oh well, we have some parts, but they're not extreme. But we do that a lot, or there was some shame, or there was some danger involved. The risk went higher. We're going to have a different kind of backlash to that from our managers. Are going to be like, what? What did you just do? So I do feel it's a real systemic process.
It's so important. And I think it really is a good, more nuanced lens on these things. And I'm also hearing it's not based on a moral judgment. It's kind of based, in
No.
your view, on how our system is kind
Yeah,
of harmonizing with it or
that's
integrating it.
right. There's just, yeah, and that's so, it's so important to get away from the right and the wrong.
So I was curious with those words you use to soothe, to distract, and to escape, if you would be open to doing a little brainstorming with me about how sex could be used to soothe, to distract, or to escape.
Oh, yeah. Well, soothe could be a lot of things. Any kind of touch can be soothing and or reassuring. Touching ourselves, being touched by others can be a soothing touch. I'm thinking also just I'm thinking right now, am I thinking like sort of is soothing non-aroused touch? I don't know, like not
Mhm.
super aroused. I'm thinking out loud with you. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't have
yeah,
an answer. Off the
yeah,
top of my head, if I had
yes.
to say, and I'm not saying this is true, maybe soothing is touch. It's not about arousal so much. It's about a comfort, feeling good, back scratching, feet rub, or any kind of massaging, or that all of that can be very, very soothing, comforting, relaxing, regulating for the system,
Mhm. Yeah.
not necessarily directly related to arousal, which is a different sort of level of touch experience.
And then, and again, there's such I want to try to give some specifics for a minute so it maybe makes it a little more concrete, right? So if we think
Right.
about someone who comes home after a tough day and smokes a joint and then watches porn and masturbates for a little while, would there be perhaps some soothing and some gear changing, some
Absolutely.
soothing, some distracting, and some escaping?
All three. That one nails all
That's a
three.
winner.
Yeah, it nails
No
all
wonder it's
three.
such a winning combination.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. I mean, it gets you in another time and space. It's a physical release.
Mhm.
And yeah,
And the touch itself can be soothing.
yes,
And
absolutely.
then if the person is okay with that, it's not having any negative implications, they can stop and do their chores, go to
Right.
work the next day, right?
Right.
Then we're saying, okay, that could be an adaptive strategy. That could be
Yeah.
something that works for that person, right? But then
Yep.
say they have a partner who's pissed that they come home and do that. Because
Right.
I'm right here in the other room and you're not paying any attention to me and you're going in there and isolating and looking at stuff that I find offensive and
Yeah, the meaning of it. So the
Mhm.
impact of that. So that person A, that person who's going into to have that time of themselves, also part of self for that would be caring about that impact on others. I'm not saying that they have to give it up, but you want to care about the impact on others if we are in relationship. You think self is shows up vertical and horizontal, right? Vertical is how is it for me, going inside to me, my exiles, knowing what's happening in my system, what I'm doing for me. Horizontal, what is happening in the space between me and other. So for that person, again, so they might not be aware of their impact on the other person. And so the other person has to do a vertical dive. What's happening for you? What is my meaning for that? I feel unwanted, or I feel you don't like it, or now you prefer sex with yourself than me, or whatever meaning they're making. If they're feeling stressed, what's the exile there, and what are their protectors there? And can they share that with their partner? And if we're the clinician, right, we're trying to help them know their system vertically to share what my exile is and what my protectors are. And for that other to say, it's truly, yeah, it does not at all take away from my desire for you, or if anything, it just keeps that all alive for me. Or there is something going on. I come home from work and this is the state I'm in, and I can't function unless I have that time to myself, or what's happening around stress or not good enough, or so for them to do the vertical dive as well.
Yeah. It's funny, I'm right in the office now with that couple, I'm kind of I'm
Uh-huh.
hearing them, and then I'm kind of
Yeah.
hearing person A saying, well, when I come home from work, you are deep in your phone and you're texting with your friends and you're watching your shows and you're not available, or all you want to talk
Uh-huh.
about are chores and like so then we get into the relationship therapy piece too, right? Like the how the
Yeah, the
different
relational
firefighters, like
piece.
sometimes the sexual firefighters get really stigmatized in the relationship. We don't really
Yeah.
recognize the firefighters that might keep a partner out of connection, but that are less taboo, maybe, or not, it's not
Yeah,
taboo, but
right.
less judged.
Yeah, got my nose in my phone. And what is the meaning of that for partner A? What is the meaning? How do they take that? They take that as you're busy, you're happy, you're content, you're busy. I'm gonna go get happy too, get content. Or, so maybe if that's their meaning, okay, it feels like we're both just doing something for ourselves right now. Or it doesn't feel that way. What is the meaning that they make of it? Which is, do they actually have an exile? It's like, doesn't even care if I walked in the door. Doesn't even care if I walked in the door. So, okay. So, is there an exile in there that doesn't feel wanted? And so then they say, well, I'm going to go take care of myself. I'm going to take care of this. There's this that feels sad. Parts that feel sad are not wanted. So,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
part of the release for them and the comfort for them. But then there's an impact that they're not aware of. So following that, sort of tracking the sequence between them, right? What is the meaning that they're making? And we have so many burdens. You could discuss this way better than me, I'm sure, Patricia, but the burden beliefs about sex and what's okay and what's not okay. But getting to the meaning of that, we have to if we don't know what our exiles are feeling, then we're never going to get anywhere.
absolutely. It's true. And that's the magic of bringing the IFS lens to this, because
I
often it feels like
know.
a zero sum game. Like, okay, we've identified the pattern. And when I would work with people before I had the IFS lens, I would feel like I would just kind of get into the corner with them.
Sure.
There's no, okay, like everyone's dug in.
Yeah,
But when we can
right.
start to bring in curiosity and
That's
gosh, what's
right.
happening for you and what's happening for you, and we have this vertical and the horizontal, etc. It starts to open some space to
Yeah, for that. So for partner B to recognize, wow, I actually come home from work. and I am in such a bad mood, or I'm feeling angry, or I feel so unvalued, I'm so stressed out. So yeah, I go to my phone. So maybe they're soothing too. Maybe they are in, maybe they're soothing too, and they aren't aware of their impact. They have no idea that it looks like they don't care. They're just like, they're not aware. So, IFS does gives us those opportunities.
Yeah. Something else that I was thinking about was the manager's use of sexuality
Oh,
to
right.
self-soothe also, or like to keep from being vulnerable. So, oh, you're off doing your thing. I'm going to go off and do my thing, right? Like it doesn't always come from a firefighter, right? It could become a proactive, like I'm going to take care of my needs first because you're not going to meet my needs. So maybe I'm going to do certain things sexually for myself because I don't want to ask you for that, or I don't want to risk being rejected. So I'm going to do things for myself. Would you call that manager, or does that still sound
I
firefighter?
would, yeah. I mean, it gets tricky for me, but I guess I just want to say I don't know if that's proactive or it's reactive to the other, or I don't know. But I really know that it's this sort of, it is sort of management since it's trying to get out in front of something. Like if I get in control of our relationship by doing sex for me first and taking care of me sexually first, if I want to get out and so if it's for the desire to sort of control one's own inner world or one's own experience or the way one shows up in the relationship, I think anything that has about to do with control has a manager sort of feel to me.
Hmm.
When it's
Yeah.
control how we're looked, how we're received, and of course control our own inner reactivity.
Yeah. This might segue into some questions I'd love to ask
Yeah,
you. I've been
jump on
curious
that.
about, like, at the interface of, say, substance use and sex,
Yeah,
which can happen in a lot of ways. Sometimes it really helps, people even get the advice maybe from a professional, have a glass of wine and,
right,
you'll relax. So it could be a little weed, a little alcohol, a little something to take the edge
right.
off, right? But
Yeah,
then sometimes someone might be like, well, I actually can't really have sex if I'm not in using a substance in some way. This is, I guess, in terms of maybe anxiety. There's a lot of, I mean, there's
yeah,
prescription drugs that help people function sexually. There's like just a lot of different ways. And so sometimes it's proactive and intentional, but sometimes if someone gets drunk and goes
yeah,
out and then wants to find someone to hook up with.
yeah. A whole other, right. I would hear it to go back to that first example of having a drink or edibles or whatever, a little weed. I guess what I would say is that when we say take the edge off, I always like to unpack that. Who's got the edge? So if our managers are, we're preoccupied, we're still thinking about work or the kids or something. We have a tendency to stay in our head. The brain doesn't turn off easily. And so if that's, so what I would, if I had to label that, I'd say, so you're somewhere inside, some part of you's thinking about sex, or your partner brings it up and you're thinking, it sounds good. How am I going to get there? How am I going to get from here to there? So if we know about ourselves that I would say so one thing if it's become intense where we need a lot of a substance in order to feel okay or safe and we're not from self and from our parts not feeling okay with what we're doing with what it takes to feel safe or what it takes to feel relational or sexual or feel desire, then we're looking at the whole system. There's some exiles in there, and then what is can we unblend from some of those managers in a different way? So one way to unblend from a manager is to have a couple glasses of wine or to have some cannabis. And is there any other way? So that's something for us to think about. Can listening to music, what else can help us with those managers? So there's that. So I would, for the person, I would just want to say for them, are they comfortable with it? Or what is it? Are they feeling, again, is there backlash after they've used substances? Is there an impact on their partner? If one wants to use or get high and the other one doesn't, how does that affect them? What is the meaning they each make of that? But if that's all okay, then it's good to go. But you're talking in your second example about someone who's using a lot to sort of disinhibit, which is to say, calm, minimize, escape their manager fears and their manager judgment so that they can go, so they can hook up because they want, So then I would say those substances are there to help flat out manage your fears, manage your worries, manage your judgment, which frees the part that wants sex. And is there more to it than that? Is it feeling lonely? Is the exile feeling lonely or uncomfortable under there, feeling shame under there, whatever it's feeling that it wants to have relief from. So that's usually a systemic piece.
Hmm.
But in
Yeah.
that case, yeah, the substances are helping the man. It's a more extreme example of help of getting away from managers that would put brakes on.
Yeah. This is great. And then would it also be a way to douse out the fears of the exiles too, perhaps, or
Oh,
the, you
awesome.
know,
Yes. Perfect,
uh,
Patricia.
an exile really wants to be loved, wants attachment, wants connection, and then the person is like, no, we can't go there. That's not going to happen. We got to shut that down and be in a more of a kind of conquest, sexual conquest that's not going to be emotional. And we're just going to get off. We're going to get
Oh,
off and we're going to have a release and then we're going to not get attached.
right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Right. Yes. So if we have, so now you're talking about parts and I can't go manager firefighter yet, but parts that want to have a sex that helps them not feel emotionally attached. They want to do it in a way that they don't feel attached, that they can sort of walk away.
Hmm.
One and done.
Hmm.
And so is that helping them not feel something in their exiles that feels afraid, not good enough, something,
Hmm.
or just
Yeah.
afraid of being known and seen, right?
Yeah.
Little exiles that can't be exposed, just afraid of being
Hmm.
exposed, known.
Yeah. Like I'll often, talk to people who have had a habit maybe of that type of more disconnected,
Yeah.
sexual interaction, but then when either they or the other person starts to form an attachment, then it creates a lot of chaos in the system because maybe some part of them wants the attachment,
Yeah.
but then all these other parts are like, no, like we don't want to lose our independence and we don't want to get hurt and remember that terrible breakup that happened.
Oh, yeah, that polarity, right? The part. So then you have to be with the polarity, the parts that want more and they want closer and they want attached. And then the parts that don't. Let's say, F no, we are not
Mhm.
getting attached. We know what happens when we get attached, we get lost or they take over or something bad happens. So, and then the exiles, who always long for relationship, but they always also long for safe relationship.
Mhm.
So our relationship's safe. Some exiles don't think they are with good reason.
Mhm.
So, so then we have different kinds of protectors. Protectors go, those managers are going to idealize and go look for the perfect person, or maybe the firefighters that might say, just one and done, just don't get involved. And then someone touches us, and our exiles are like, okay, now it's safe, now it's good. Here's the one, I got it. We're here now.
Yeah.
And then the managers and the firefighters have a different opinion. Well,
Well, that can be so confusing for partners too, right? Like, when you hook up
oh
with someone or it seems
yeah.
very casual, but then in bed or just in that connection, maybe all those parts step back and there is some real tenderness that comes
Yeah.
out. But then those protectors jump right back in and then maybe pull back or ghost the person or, can't keep that exposed. And that can be very confusing.
Oh, absolutely, with good reason. It's almost like the backlash is to close the system down, to leave early, to stop talking, to distance in some way. I got close and I really let myself get close and maybe express some things. And then the backlash is closing it down. We're shutting this puppy down. We're
Hmm.
not, nope, nope, nope.
Yeah.
And right, absolutely. That is a mixed message for who they're with. Absolutely. So then, in the therapy, it's like, yeah, they are polarized.
Right.
You're not crazy. They're mixed up. They are polarized. You're not crazy. You're getting
That's
both.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would have some work to do. And the other person has some work to do. I have the patience to wait this out or not.
Mhm. This is reminding me then of another twist this can take,
Yeah.
which is someone will know that's their pattern and they're trying to be responsible and not have people get attached to them. So, someone will hook up with someone they meet
Yeah.
casually or on an app and they'll say, "Look, I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm just looking for some fun, this weekend or whatever."
Uh-huh.
And they lay it out, right? And then
Yeah.
maybe they can really show up in that container
Yes.
that is what they have agreed upon, said they're available
Uh-huh.
for. Now they
Right.
might connect with another person who actually is in the same space and can go
Yeah.
with that.
Yep.
But sometimes it's so good that like the
Right.
other person gets a bit addicted then to the connection and then keeps wanting to chase the person and get them to be more available than they are, which can take on
Right.
some addictive qualities.
Oh gosh. Yeah. What is that?
He's
Intermittent
perfect. She's
reward.
perfect. We had
Right.
oh my God, it was the best sex of my life, or this person was so cool. Why, and we had such a good time.
Yeah.
Why aren't they calling me back? I'm gonna start texting more often, or I think they said they work at this place. I'm gonna go by there. Like there can sometimes
Yeah.
be then a compulsive, maybe firefightery part that wants to pursue.
Yeah. So this person is coming in, I'll just say manage first. I'm here, I'm available for 48 hours, and I'm letting you know that. And again, of course, some people do not let anyone know that either. So that's another whole little factor to another twist. But the first example you gave is someone who says, I can be with you for the night, or that's what I'm looking for fun. And they say they're looking for fun. But then one falls for the other. One gets closer. One feels more attached than the other. And that's a really painful place. That's just painful. And theoretically, no one's doing anything wrong. Theoretically, person A is not leading them on and pretending. And theoretically, person B just fell for them. And that's just their feelings. And it's just really painful to fall for someone who's not that available. So then it's sort of like they're firefighters. Firefighters, right, ignore, right? They ignore signals and just say, I'll just call. And the manager's like, you shouldn't do that. You can't call like this. Stop texting. And the firefighters do it. But they're taking care of exiles. So those exiles that have just thought that this person is right for them that's where that work is going to have to go to the exiles because those firefighters are just trying to take care of them.
Hmm.
And and the managers are a little bit not recognizing all the signs, and the other person is a whole other set. Of course it is okay to just have what do we want to call it, recreational sex for the sake of fun and come and go. I mean, there's nothing, and if I say that's what I'm doing, then that's what I'm doing. But the point is, if that person has a pattern, if that person knows that B is now getting attached, their responsibility is to say no and not go anymore. And if they're taking advantage of that person wanting them by showing up anyway, even though they know most of their parts are never going to commit, and that's what that person wants, that person is in a pretty big manipulative firefighter, and they got some work to do. So if they would know the other person's attached, it's their job to say, hey, I'm really, no, you know what? I'm really not
Hmm.
ready at that. I gotta go.
That's really
And
interesting. Also, sorry to
right. Yeah,
refuse.
no, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, number one, you mentioned intermittent reinforcement and
Yeah.
how potent that is and how
Yes.
that can feed an addictive
Yeah.
cycle or a com
Yes.
compulsion or
Yeah.
obsession, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then I am curious about the manipulative, I think the kinds of firefighters who aren't just the soothers, like, or I don't know if they're still considered soothers, who really want to take for their own gratification or they want to play with someone or get what they can the way they can figure out how to get it. And that
Hmm.
plays out a lot in sex in different ways.
Yeah, I guess I would call them revenge firefighters. In a certain way, I suspect that once we listen to that, people who want to take power, so they want power, they want to have the sex when they want to have it, they want to have it with someone who really wants them, but they don't ever want that person as much. They want to stay in control and in power over someone else who's more vulnerable because they're expressing their emotions. So that makes them more vulnerable. Expressing our vulnerability makes us more vulnerable. We are more vulnerable when that's visible and we've owned up to it, and we're less vulnerable when we don't. So that's that vulnerability in, differential. It's power, but it's also vulnerability. That's how we're maintaining the power. So that's a tricky business. But if I'm the therapist for that person, I'm looking at how is that part trying to help you by staying in control and keeping detached and being near someone who's a sure thing, but someone you're not, but not actually get in relationship. And once that part afraid will happen, it's afraid it'll happen, it'll lose control if it lets its emotion. I suspect generally it's a fear of they'll lose control if they're actually emotionally available
Mm.
because we
Yeah.
are. That is the essence of vulnerability,
Yeah.
is that we are unprotected.
Right.
We are not protected when we're
Yeah.
vulnerable. And so to
Mm.
get to a place of not being protected and still feel safe
Mhm.
is quite a journey for some people.
What's coming to mind is often there's a fear because there is a very needy exile that will come out. There's the vulnerability of being naked,
Yeah.
figured emotionally and physically, right? Being exposed,
Mhm.
and we are vulnerable, right? We can't control what will happen at a certain point when our protectors
Yeah.
all step back. So if we're there with some self energy, that's vulnerable enough, right? But I
Yeah.
also find that sometimes those firefighters are really afraid of a very maybe needy or like a young exile that they feel a lot of shame about, that they
Oh,
might regard
definitely.
as
I'm with you.
disgusting or too needy and emotional. And so
Wait.
then the vulnerability, it's not even just the vulnerability of having their heart open. The vulnerability is like if the protectors step back, we're going to get taken over by this really embarrassing, needy
Well,
part.
yes, and who thinks that way? So the manager itself does not think that their exiles are too needy, but their managers do, and their firefighters help protect that in their own ways in that situation by being in one-up relationships. But their managers are in contempt of those parts that look defenseless, that they don't feel safe around that. I'm with you. They feel those parts are weak. Those
Mhm.
parts are defenseless. They're sniveling little blah blah blah. So the the managers are burdened with very specific, rigid ideas that and I'm sure they've experienced that being vulnerable and being they isn't safe for them. So now their managers say I got to be tough and invulnerable, and their firefighters go get that for them. They get them to be in a top up. What am I thinking? Top over? I don't know.
Top, they're
But
going to be a
one up.
top and not a bottom.
We got top and out of bottom and one up, right?
Yeah.
The one up needing less, right? Less available, less emotional, less vulnerable. And so you know, that's quite a it's a very it's that's a very painful place to be too, although they may not feel their pain. But there's a lot of pain underneath that, a lot of
Yeah.
limitation to that life.
When it's, yes, when there's a lot of burden in the system,
Yeah,
right? Like, so unburdened people may have preferences to top or to bottom or to play
yeah,
a particular role, but
yes, of
it's when
course.
it feels like it's in choice and that it's not
That's
compelled by a
right.
polarization or a fear in the system. It's a really different experience, right?
Oh yeah. If in self, it doesn't, we're just doing what feels fun or right or sensual or sexy or arousing. And it can be anything,
Mhm.
being in control, being out of control, being in equal control, whatever it is, if you want to talk about that, or
Hmm.
power. You can
Yeah.
play with that, as you use, the word consent, right? For two people to consent to play with power is very different than someone who rigidly must be in power so as to be invulnerable. I mean, obviously, you know that too. I'm not telling you
Yeah.
anything you don't know, but just there's a wide chasm between those two places.
We've been speaking a lot about this different aspects of firefighters and self-soothing and substance use and all these different scenarios. And I know that's
Right.
been a big part of your career, right? Like how many years have you worked in the area of addictions?
Well, and just to say, I think of addictions. I probably, like everyone, of course, I could go to substances, alcohol, and drugs. My brain leans in that direction first. But in my experience, and you know this better than me, obviously we can have different kinds of sexual preoccupations, or addictive processes related to sex and sexual behaviors, or gambling, different forms of eating. I consider all of those things part of the addictive process. First of all, because nobody has just one firefighter. And second of all, people often trade. They figure out their substances, but then sex becomes a really preoccupation. Or they figure out their food and shopping thing, and then they kind of get into substances. So just to say, I think of those things as very, and they often, how often substances might go with sex, and that can be problematic. It can be fine, it can be fun, and it also can be problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. And what else are you doing these days and what are you excited about?
Let's see. I'm excited about a couple things. I am excited that I just did a big webinar this fall. I just finished it in late November with IFSI, a four-module thing around working with addictive processes in IFS. And I am very excited for people to start connecting IFS to addictive behaviors. We connect IFS as a good model for trauma. But again, to me, the firefighters have a very big, wide umbrella. And for thinking about IFS to work with, which you're already doing with different kinds of with sexuality in its big umbrella, right? And other kinds of things that we tend to use to soothe and distract and escape. All of that. I think IFS is such a great opportunity to work with that. And it's so de-shaming, takes away judgment. We can work with all those managers that hold all those rigid ideas because they're trying to protect and keep us safe. And then, of course, gives us access to exiles, that sort of the drive underneath it all, which the exiles are holding. So I am very excited about that. It was a huge one, very, very well attended, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very excited about it. Took a while to make all that happen. So I've been teaching it for a long time because my own family, I grew up in a family, an Irish Catholic. Uh, the firefighters were apparent, not all in my immediate family, but I didn't have to go too far out. Lots of impact and legacy in my family: drugs, alcohol, food issues, sex issues, sexual abuse, just lots of gambling, suicide. It's all there, and it was there. There was, so it's been there in many relationships I've been in a problematic kind of way. So when I came to IFS, I had already spent 20 years as a psychotherapist, and I'd already worked with trauma survivors. That was my main thing. So I already saw that we need certain behaviors to cope with trauma. This was already obvious, right? And then I came into IFS, and just the advanced, clear language of the intention of firefighters to work with pain was so meaningful to me. Because when people are engaged in behavior that's hurtful to themselves and it's hurtful to a lot of other people, how to be with that has been part of my own journey. And so to have some real ideas about how to work with that has been extremely rewarding to me. So that's why but at the same time, from day one, the first thing I ever wrote about firefighters is why I love my firefighters. And I said, firefighters add spice to life, relieve us of the humdrum of our manager-driven lives. So I always think of it as a balance, a place for balance in the most healthy way. So anyway, that's been very important to me. And Heart Lessons of the Journey, which is totally related to that, which is, again, my own life has led me to be here doing this kind of work because of experiences in my life. So I want to invite therapists to sit with And that's if you, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but to sit with how did I get here? How did I get to be talking about sex 10 hours a day? That might be a question I would have for you, Patricia.
That's a great
How did you
question.
get here, right? Like,
That is a
so
great
great.
question. Do you
Do you feel
really
like, yeah, I'd
do
love
you,
it. If you feel like talking about it, I'd love
do you have 10 hours for the
it.
answer?
Do you have I have a retreat? You can sign up.
So many parts have stories about this.
I bet.
It's been really hard to there's not just one narrative.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. A lot
Hmm.
of things led you, right? Has
Yeah.
it been your priority for a long time?
Yeah. Yeah, I can say a little bit about it. I always think young, if I think go back really young, and of course,
Yeah,
hindsight, I see things that,
sure.
I didn't see then, but I think there were some gifts in my family and upbringing around the positive, like a not particularly explicitly stated, but my parents had a very warm and loving relationship. Like sexuality was not something that was burdened. I grew up in a kind of liberal Jewish family and
Right.
didn't pick up a lot of religious burdens or things like that. I felt like there was a positive
Yeah.
place. And then I think biologically, I had kind of a sexual drive and a curiosity from a pretty young age. I always thought it was interesting. And I also kind of look for the edges. Maybe it's a little firefightery, what's taboo, what's not being said, and sort of,
Yeah,
always curious
right.
about what's not being said. I'm looking for the books back when it was books that would be the
Uh-huh.
sexual material in a home and not the
Right.
computer. So I think I had sort of a curiosity, and then I was interested in feminism and volunteered with
Oh,
Planned
right.
Parenthood and was
Beautiful.
interested in I mean when I was probably I can't maybe I was in like fourth grade. Like I had a little activist part. And I remember I had a fourth grade teacher who said, and she was about to retire. She was miserable and just hated the kids. She was really ready to be done. She looked
Yeah.
ancient to me at the time. That there was a new rule where we could only go to the bathroom once a day.
Oh, jeez.
And here I am, this, pea-sized bladder. And I was
Right.
like, that's not okay. Like, that's just, I can't, that's just
Don't
so
deny the
unfair.
body.
Yeah.
Right.
So I remember, well, this is a bit of a tangent a little bit, but I was so angry about it, but I didn't have a lot of courage and confidence, but I had a lot of righteous rage. And so I decided to slip a little note in her bag
Ah!
and saying that I thought it was like not a good rule. I might have said it was, I don't think I said it was dumb, but I was like, that, how could we only go to the bathroom once a day? And so then I was terrified afterward. That was my little firefighter. I do have a little impulsive
Yeah, right.
firefighter that's like gets very,
Mm,
really riled up and feels very justified in doing something that's like a
right.
little like maybe not the right way to do it.
Uh-huh.
So then I was like a little backlash. Oh no, what did I do? And then the teacher nothing happened. Like I sort of forgot about it. Like I did it, then I got used to it, whatever. And then like a week or two later, the teacher stopped in the middle of teaching, her math lesson and looked around the room and she goes, "Oh, by the way, who put the note in my bag?" Who complaining about the bathroom policy. And she goes, and I know it was one of my brighter students because they spelled anonymous correctly. I assigned it anonymous.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And there were probably three of us that would have known that word at that time.
Oh my God. Called out for your militant,
Called out for my like
your
not very
intelligence and militants. Yeah.
had a strong sense of injustice, but not a lot of courage and confidence to stand in it, and take
Oh,
the heat directly. Yeah, so
yeah, but I guess I'm hearing this, just the joys of the body and to normalize and to want everyone to have some joy and some militancy around the body, like
mhm.
not being negative or
Right,
trying
body
to have a
integrity
restrict
and
and not to restrict
yeah.
or constrain,
Hmm.
that, and I think that message is so. I think it does get lost. I think our culture, I mean, I grew up in Irish Catholic culture. I mean, there was a million rules about touch and sex that we were given overtly and not overtly. So there was a lot for us to, a lot for me and most of us to work our way through. And I think it was a process for me to sort of unburden some of that shame and some of those ideas. And as but I was also a little polarized. I was also kind of curious, and I also wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I had those parts as well, and I wanted to explore what I wanted to explore. So
Yeah.
all of that was there as well. So
Hmm.
it's interesting though. But I love that you want to share really the joy and the freedom, the honor of the body. That's what I'm
Right.
hearing anyway.
Yeah,
And I think that's
absolutely. And
great.
so that, there was sort of that thread, that went through, volunteering for Planned Parenthood and things like that, that
Yeah,
kind of justice oriented and then education oriented, wanting to fill in gaps where
yeah,
we weren't learning. And then, over the years, I've realized that there was a lot of sexual burdens and trauma in the family, more in like the family tree legacy stuff.
sure.
We'd go through, pictures once I was an adult going through these old family photos, and it was like, a lot of suicides and just like different things that had, like even generations back, and that had like, no one knew for sure, but there was sort of a whiff of a sexual
Yeah,
trauma around a lot of these different
right.
things. And so I think somehow that has to figure in, like just a sense that like these things aren't being named and spoken, and people were suppressed in whether it was their sexual orientation or maybe illicit relationships that, were very toxic, and especially at that time, like just whatever it was, like I think that's in there somewhere too, like a desire to.
Yeah. I certainly relate to that too. I mean, there's definitely legacy around sexual trauma in my family. I feel very lucky that in my 30s, my mom eventually talked to me about what happened to her in her childhood. So here I am working with sexual abuse survivors, and I don't even know what's happened with my own mom. I mean, just boom, so many things clicked into place when she was able to speak about that, and I'm very lucky for that. And I know that there's, whatever else. I don't, there's things I don't
Yeah.
well, but just that sort of that mission, to
Hmm.
really bring some healing to that. And to also,
Right.
and I love what you're saying about expose it. Can it be
Hmm.
safe? What I'm hearing you say, and I agree with you so much, could we just talk about this? Can we just like not talk about this? Because we actually tried to find a way. And don't we love this model for this way? A part of us that says no, and then a part of us that yearns for yes or whatever. You know,
Yeah,
it's such a
absolutely.
beautiful way for that. So
Hmm.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that too, just bringing it out of the shadows. Patrick
Hmm.
Carnes says sex is the most shamed of the most shamed of the most shamed of our behaviors. So
Absolutely.
what happens and who is shaming in IFS? Self is not shaming anybody. So parts are engaged in shaming. They have a legacy burden to shame. Exiles get shamed, and then firefighters fight back. And so I love this model for working with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I could just quickly say I've also just found it fascinating. I think sexuality is fascinating, and I don't like to be bored. And also I came into this area, like with an interest in connection and communication. I didn't know I was going to start to become a therapist. Initially, I was looking to study communication, but to me, I didn't know it.
Uh-huh.
In a university, they're talking about TV and
Right.
as communication. And to me, it was like, I want to really, like, when you really connect with someone, you really communicate,
Yeah.
like that sense of communion. And so then to
Yeah.
me, it's like on this, just how can we talk about connection and relationship without including sexual, the deepest form of connection that we can probably
Mhm.
experience, or one of them at least. So anyway, so there are a lot of roads leading to Rome here for me, my spirituality and
Uh-huh.
like, just I believe, and when I talk a lot, we're going to wind down soon, but the idea of sexual self energy and the idea that our self energy is, we can access very expansive self energy potentially through sexuality when our parts allow us. And so there's a kind of
Mhm.
sacred spiritual experience that can be available with the right circumstances.
I love all that. I love all that. That's a lot, like you said.
It's why I can't write a book because I can't like focus on one
How can I
thing. I've got
focus?
all the expanding kaleidoscope all the time in my brain and
Yeah, but it's just wonderful to do this though, and to have this and to pray. What you're doing also is prioritizing something that we exile,
hmm
something that
Yeah.
we don't talk about so
hmm
easily, as you say. So it gets kind of,
Right.
I don't like to say, I want to feel careful about using the word exile because of the term exile, but we do banish it, or repress it, or shame it, or
Yes.
deminimize it. Well, so I remember taking a couples class years ago. It was like just a summer class about something, and they're talking about what do you find about qualities in relationship or something. And we went all around this entire room, and no one talked about sex. And so me and this woman next to me were just kind of looking at each other. We were both had the same thought, and so we're like the last two to speak, and we go, and sex, and everyone goes, oh, of course.
hmm
So it's like, it's like, of
Right.
course, but I haven't thought to mention it. So it's that sense where we sort of, I think in a way it gets, there's polarity. It gets undervalued and then overvalued. We undervalue it and we press it, and we have a lot of some religious or just cultural restriction around expression. Then then our firefighters can get obsessed because our managers have been shutting them down or repressing. So finding that polarity. But I do think our culture doesn't really, I mean, you know this, I don't need to
Mhm.
say this to you, but there's so many ways in which it doesn't feel safe to talk about sex.
And to talk about it in a self-led way, like it's either
Right. Not to
titillating or
be,
silly or
yes.
commercial or exaggerated or
Yeah. To do that sort of
yeah.
innuendo thing, which
hmm
is so uncomfortable, and not really have clear, honest.
hmm
But I think our model helps us be able to speak to the
It
nuance.
does. And that's one of the big motivations I had for starting this podcast is to have conversations. Like, let's just have conversations about
Right.
sexuality, and the IFS lens just lets us be with it, in this very interesting way. And so it's not advice. I'm not giving tips for the biggest orgasm ever. It's about, sometimes I think of this as the sexual position no one's talking about, which is how we position ourselves psychologically when we
Love
enter
that.
and leave a sexual situation. So I thank you so much for coming on to this podcast. It's an amazing conversation, and there's so many dimensions to all of
I
this.
know there are.
Mhm.
I don't know
Yeah.
why. Now, I might be oversharing and telling you to edit this, but I also feel like saying, as a woman who's of a certain age, certainly called a senior, sex is still there. And so it's a delight to me and a joy in my life. And so I also think that it evolves over time. And I don't want to get into all that, but I just think just different things about it have evolved in me and in my relationships and just within myself
hmm
over the years. I think it's like everything else is sort of a process, and ideally we can keep getting, for lack of a better term, more self energy around it, or more,
hmm
you know,
Yeah,
and more embodied. And I think, there's, we're always moving, we're always moving one direction or another. We hope forward.
that's right. I appreciate your sharing that. And research bears that out, actually, that, despite the stereotype that older people, who are in good health, etc., are not as sexual, people tend to report often the most satisfying sex of their lives when they're older because they're just free of those burdens and all of those agendas of their parts.
Right.
And there's more room to just really appreciate, true companionship and connection.
We've
And
had a
so I'm
lot
really
of
happy for
therapy.
you and happy for anyone listening, who's just still in the game, whatever that looks like. It might look different,
Yeah.
it might sound different, but it's just another
It can be a part of
dimension of
our
living a
life.
full life. Yeah.
That's right. It's a part of life that doesn't go away.
Yeah. Awesome. So is there anything else you want to share or say on this topic? Or do you?
I've really enjoyed it. And what I noticed I didn't speak about is working with so many people who've had trauma, and I haven't talked about the trauma, and we don't have to start right now at the end of things, but just to name that I feel like also there can be enormous healing there. And so we may have gone through times of exploitation, neglect, and all of that, abuses. But at the same time, I just think there's beautiful healing that can happen in our bodies, and our relationship with our bodies is something also that can heal and change and grow. So, and I think this model is really helpful with it. And so I think that wherever, I guess, wherever you are, be hopeful, because if you, as I say, if you spend time on something, it will move. It will, you can move forward. So I
So
want to say
important.
that too, that um, it's really, there's so much hope really in our relationship with our bodies and with ourselves. What was the book? Our Bodies, Ourselves, right? It was a really good
Absolutely.
book.
Yeah, it was a great book.
That relationship grows and heals too.
And how can people find you, Cece?
On my website, which I'm trying to build a new one, but anyway, it's there. And I have a newsletter, and you can sign up to hear about future events. And I have books. I have a dozen podcasts if you don't want to read a book, and some chapters up there. So just where you can find me in the world of events, and listen to my podcasts and read the book if you're interested. And it's all on my website. So that's probably a great place to
Okay.
go.
Great. And we'll put that in the show notes. And one
Beautiful.
last question I like to ask guests is if you would like to share something you find pleasurable in life.
Oh gosh, so many things. I had to pick one.
I think you've already shared a few, but if you want to, one more for good measure.
Oh, wow. Actually, I would just say right now in my life, like I like my home, and I just got married a few months ago, even though our partner and I have been together a long time, and we lived together for a number of years. Feels really good to be married. I feel like I left one more little manager to let go. And so I feel very happy and content. I mean, we have our things, right? But in general, I feel so deeply grateful for my life right now. I feel just grateful for my life in general, and in my relationship with Evan, and in my home and my adult daughters, all of that. There's things, of course, there's always things, but
You know,
I've been through a lot of times, and it's nice to be here.
well, congratulations on the marriage. And I just
Thanks.
noticed, just really feeling the warmth of that, the warmth you're
Thanks,
describing,
Patricia.
and really
Yeah,
happy for you.
yeah, it was really fun to just decide to do that. We decided on a Saturday and got married a few days later. It was great. Tell anyone, it was so fun. So thank you so
Awesome.
much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Take good care.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Led in Bed podcast. Check us out at www.patriciarich.com/podcast, where you can sign up for a free guide to the 6 S's of sexual self-energy. Until next time.